Holidays for you. Sean speaking. Can I help you?
Oh, hi. I've been looking at your website. I'm interested in a cycling holiday in Austria in April.
We have 2 trips in April. One lasts 14 days and the other 10 days.
I think the 10-day trip is better. So let's see. I've got a calendar here. What are the dates?
Well, that trip is in the middle of the month. It starts on the 17th of April and it finishes on the 27th.
That suits me. I can't leave work before the 10th of April.
Let me see if there are any spaces. Is it just for yourself?
Myself and my sister, so 2 of us.
Yes, we have spaces.
Is it a big group?
At the moment, there are 12 people booked on this trip, and with you 2, that will be 14. The maximum number is 16, so it's almost fully booked. We can't go over that because it's hard to keep a larger group together.
I need to check that I'm fit enough for this, but the distances look okay. The website says we'll ride approximately 45 kilometres a day. Is that right?
That's correct, and I've got the exact distances here. It really depends on which part of the trip. Some days are only 35 kilometres, and some are more. But you'll never have to cycle more than 50 kilometres in one day.
Oh, okay. I can manage that. And we stay in hotels?
Yes, they all have restaurants, and the rooms have ensuite facilities.
And do they have pools? It's how I relax after a long day.
There is a swimming pool in a few of the hotels, but none of them has a gym.
I don't think we'll need a gym after all that cycling. I'd better find out how much the holiday costs before I get too excited.
Including flights, it's £1,177 for one person.
Oh, we'll book our own flights on the internet.
That's just £1,013 then. And we can book insurance for you if you want.
And which meals are included in that price?
Well, breakfast, of course, and the hotels will provide you with a packed lunch each day. We do stop during the afternoon in a village somewhere for a rest, so any snacks you buy then are extra. Then dinner will be in the hotel every evening, and that's included in the price of the holiday.
And you provide the bicycles, of course. What else?
A lock and a bell come with the bike, as well as lights, although you shouldn't need to cycle in the dark. There's a small bag, or pannier, on the front of the bike, where you can put the things you want to take with you during the day, like water or fruit. But we won't allow you to cycle unless you bring a helmet. We don't provide these locally because, like walking boots on a walking holiday, it's really important it fits properly.
Okay.
If there's any special gear you need for your holiday, we recommend a particular website, and you can get a discount by quoting your booking reference.
Great. What is it?
It's www.ballantine.com. That's all one word, and I'll spell it for you. www.ballantine.com.
Good. I've got that down. I've been looking at your website while we've been talking. I see we cycle along the River Danube.
Yes, it's one of Europe's most well-known areas for cycling.
It looks fascinating. Lots of beautiful countryside and things to see.
I should warn you that we do reserve the right to make some alterations to the route if the weather is bad. Some of the tracks sometimes get very muddy.
Okay, well, hopefully it won't rain too much. I know we stop in towns and villages, but do we get a chance to look around? Because I'm really interested in history.
Oh yes, you get opportunities to explore. Is there something in particular you want to see?
There's a theatre in a town called Grine. A friend of mine went there last year and said it was amazing.
Let's see. Yes, there's a guide who'll take you round the building. We don't have any other tours arranged, but you can visit several castles and museums on the holiday.
Well, thank you for all that information. I'd like to book that then.
Right, well, I'll just...
And now we have our Know Your Town section, where we look at what's on offer in our area. Today, John Munro is going to tell us about local food and eating out. John.
Well, most of us buy our food in supermarkets these days, but we're very lucky having a wonderful market here. It was originally on the piece of land in front of the cathedral, but at the beginning of the 20th century, it was moved to a site by the river. When the new shopping centre was built in the 1960s, it found a home beneath the multi-storey car park, where it still is, but there are plans to move it back to its previous home by the river. The market is now open 6 days a week. On Tuesday to Saturday, you can buy fresh fruit and vegetables, meat and cheese from the area, as well as a whole range of imported produce. But if you come on a Sunday, you'll find a different market, where craftspeople sell what they have made, things like bags, cards, clothes. During the week, there are a few stalls selling more everyday utensils like saucepans and cleaning products alongside the fruit and vegetables, as well as one new stall selling antique furniture, which is proving to be very popular. People often ask what our local dish is. As we're by the sea, they expect it to be some kind of fish recipe. Our fish is good, of course, but there isn't one particular dish that stands out. What we do have is an apple cake that isn't really made anywhere else. There's a new cafe in the high street, Barton's, which bakes them fresh every morning and serves them with delicious homemade ice cream in a choice of flavours. Now, the harbour is obviously the place to buy fresh fish. Every morning there's a stall where local fishermen sell a selection of the day's catch before the rest goes to London or abroad. They've been doing that for as long as anyone can remember, of course, but the harbour itself looks very different from a few years ago. Most of the restaurants used to be at the far end, but that part was redeveloped and the restaurants had to relocate to the other end. Many of them are simply the old ones in new premises, but a couple of new ones have opened recently, so there's a good range now, both in the harbour and the town itself. I'm now going to give you my top 6 places to eat in different parts of the town. So, number 1 for me is Merivale's, which is in one of the busiest parts of the town leading down to the harbour. It's in a side street, so it doesn't look out over the water, but it's very close, so you can take a walk after your meal and find one of the cafes with live music. At Merivale's, you can enjoy delicious fresh fish and seafood. The friendly staff offer very attentive service and a really enjoyable evening. The Lobster Pot is on the main road going down to the harbour, so it also misses out on the sea view, but the food makes up for that. It serves a huge range of fish and seafood, as well as vegetarian and meat dishes, so there's something for everyone. Prices are from mid-range to fairly expensive, so it's really only for a special occasion. Elliot's is in the city centre and is a very upmarket restaurant in the evening, but during the day it serves lunch and coffee. It's on the 20th floor above some offices, and it's a great place to sit for a while, as you can see most of the city spread out from there. It does get very busy though, and you may have to wait to be served. Not far from the city centre is the Cabin, which is on the canal bank. You can't park your car there. It's a 15-minute walk from the nearest car park, but it's very peaceful. A good place to relax away from the traffic. It's not cheap, but it's an ideal place for a long lunch. The Olive Tree is a family-run restaurant in the city centre offering beautifully prepared Greek dishes. It's well known locally and very popular. Service can be slow when it's busy as all the food is freshly made. There's plenty of room and on Friday and Saturday nights the wooden floors resound with live music and dancing, which is certainly worth going for. The last place I want to recommend has only just opened in a converted school building. The old school restaurant has been very cleverly renovated. The use of mirrors, plants and the colours on the walls makes you feel as though you're in a large garden instead of the city centre. There are only a few dishes on the menu, but they change every day. So, Tanya, I really...
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Razor. This is Helen.
Hello.
We're really pleased you've agreed to join us on this film project.
Yes, your experience is going to be so useful.
Well, I hope so. It's the technical side I know best. Lighting, sound and stuff.
But you think the script is okay?
Yes, I think it's great. Have you decided where you're going to shoot?
Well, there's the watermill scene at the end, and we've thought about some locations in town we can use. They're behind the shopping mall and on a couple of residential streets, and in an empty shop on campus. It means we don't have to worry about getting permission from a shop owner.
So, do you think we should go to all the locations with you?
It would be a good idea. We need to talk about the levels of background noise so we know they're all going to be reasonable places to film.
But the sounds of traffic will make it more natural.
I think Razor means things like aeroplanes, trains and so on that would mean we have to stop filming.
Exactly. And also, I'll make notes for myself about what lighting I'm going to need. I think the university department has a good range of equipment, but I'll need to make a list for each location for my own reference. Anyway, once we've had a look round, you can do the roadworks check.
What do you mean?
You need to find out about building work or road works, because you could start filming one day and come back in the morning to find one of the roads has been dug up. The local council have to be informed about things like that, so you can find out from them.
Okay. Then I think we need to work from the script and put together a list of all the scenes and decide which ones we're going to film when. We need to prepare the shooting schedule day by day.
You're right. Then, when you know how long filming is going to last, you can tell everyone when they're needed.
Okay, so as soon as we can, we'll audition, and then when we contact people to offer them parts, we can send the exact dates and make really sure they're free. Because often the actors are all enthusiastic, but then when you try to pin them down about whether they're really free at that time, you find they've got exams or something, or they're off to a festival just before, and you have to rush about looking for replacements.
Then we need people who can take over the main parts if one of our stars falls ill or something.
Yes, I agree. So offer the main parts to the people we really want, and then look at other volunteers who were okay.
Yes. We can select the understudies once the main roles have been confirmed. So, once we've got that sorted, and we've held all the rehearsals of the main scenes, we'll be ready to start filming.
Yes, that sounds good. Anything else?
Well, just housekeeping, really. We don't actually need costumes because actors will wear their own clothes. My family has agreed to lend us some pieces of furniture which we need, so we'll go and fetch those the weekend before we start.
We'll provide food and drink during shooting, so I'm going to borrow some cool boxes.
And I've got a little van. Most of the locations are within walking distance of the halls of residence anyway. The only one further away is the watermill.
Yes. Can you tell me about that?
Okay. Hang on a minute. I'll get my notes. There's a plan in them. Here's the mill. You see, basically you have a vertical water wheel which was used to power the grinding stones.
It sounds really interesting. Will we film inside?
Yes, that's where the final scene between the girl and the man takes place. Our plan is to fix one camera outside by the window next to the door to film through the window, and then have another handheld camera inside the mill. That means we can get two views of the same scene. We were going to do something using a mirror, but we decided that would be too complicated.
Yes, by doing it that way, all we'll need is lights on the inside, next to the wall behind the wheel, which can shine across to the opposite wall.
Will that give enough light?
I think so, because the scene is in the evening. It shouldn't be too bright. The actors will be carrying torches too.
And we'll have an old screen made of wood just inside the door, because it's a new door and it'll look wrong. The lights won't shine directly on it, so it'll be fine.
So you won't actually show the door open?
No. There's a huge box on the floor against the wall farthest from the wheel. We'll see the girl approaching the mill on her bike. Then we see through the window and the man is inside looking at it. Then the next shot is the girl in the room with him opening the box.
So it'll be a mysterious ending.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to be a great project.
Good.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. I want this afternoon, as an introduction to our ecology module, to offer examples of exotic pests, non-native animals or plants which are, or may be, causing problems, which might prove a fruitful topic for seminar papers later in the term. People and products are crisscrossing the world as never before. And on these new global highways, plants and animals are travelling too. Exotic plants and animals are turning up in Antarctica and on the most remote islands on Earth. For example, the Australian red-backed spider. It's made its way to countries fairly near home, such as New Zealand and Japan, as some of you may know. Well, it's also been found on Tristan da Cunha, which is a remote island thousands of miles from anywhere, way out in the middle of the Atlantic. Now, another famous animal invader in the other direction, so to speak, from England to Australia in the southern hemisphere, is the rabbit. This was in 1830, and it might seem less of a threat, but it became an extraordinarily destructive pest. The fact that rabbits increased so rapidly is perhaps more understandable when we remind ourselves that they had originally been introduced to England from continental Europe 8 centuries earlier. This was because they were regarded as a luxury food source, and in spite of having warm fur, they probably originated on the hot, dry plains of Spain, which of course explains why they thrive in the climate of Australia. A much less cuddly example of a pest introduced to Australia, this time from America, is fire ants. These are increasing and spreading very fast. Their huge nests can now be found in gardens in the city of Brisbane, and they are costing the Australian government a great deal of money in control measures. These were an accidental introduction, rather than a deliberate one, brought to Australia, probably in horticultural imports or in mud on second-hand machinery. As a biologist and conservationist, I have become increasingly concerned about these matters. Exotic invasions are irreversible and deserve to be taken more seriously, even when they aren't particularly damaging. For example, something that is not necessarily a major disaster compared to other ecological experiments. In 1975, an Australian species of earthworm was deliberately introduced to the Northern Hemisphere in Scotland because they were bigger than the natives. The aim was that they would be more effective than native species, but in fact they don't do more for the soil condition than the smaller locals, which they displace. Although they don't do a lot of harm, as far as we know up to now, this will probably prove to have been a mistake. A much more serious case, also in Scotland, as well as other countries, along with the latest victim, Iceland, is the New Zealand flatworm. This is a most unwelcome newcomer in these regions of northwest Europe. Basically, this flatworm came into these countries by accident. It's now been realised that it was actually carried in the plant pots containing exotic ornamental shrubs and so on, and as it eats local earthworms and doesn't benefit the local ecology in any way, it is a real pest. Next, there's a further instance, this time in the water, and it's come from Japan. It's a delicious but very fast-spreading seaweed, and is one of many exotic species, large and small, in the seas covering the rocks around Australia. Unfortunately, it is replacing indigenous seaweeds and permanently altering the ecosystem. However, to look at the situation from a business point of view, it is now being harvested and exported, dried, back to Japan, its original home, where it's particularly popular. So, sometimes we may find accidental benefits from apparently harmful arrivals. Well, you could say that world ecology is now going the same way as popular culture. Global music and fashions, food and drinks are taking over from local ones in every land. And in ecosystems, we find vigorous exotic invaders overwhelming native species and natural habitats. But can we find any examples of invaders which appear to be a problem and then find that in fact they may not be such a big issue after all? We might take as an example a native of Australia, the budgerigar, the most common pet parrot in the world, of course. Because there have been many escapes over the years, it is now to be found flying about in feral flocks where the climate suits it. So, these flocks of budgerigars have been getting very numerous in the southeast of the United States, particularly in residential areas. People have been getting quite worried about this, but it has been observed that the size of the flocks has diminished somewhat recently. The fact that they are smaller is thought to be due to the fact that new competitors for their habitat have arrived from other places. That's the last example for now. What I'd like you to consider is this. Is the planet Earth moving towards a one-world ecosystem? How far would it be a wholly bad development?
Hello, Edwina, is it? Have a seat.
Yes, Edwina. Thanks. I'm looking for a job as a nanny. I like working with children. I talked to you yesterday.
Oh, yes. Well, we covered most of the ground on the phone yesterday. I've got a form I need to complete for my records. So, you're Edwina Riley, and how should we contact you?
Oh, by email. I check it regularly.
What's the address?
It's Edwina, like my name, then R-I, the first two letters of my surname, at worldnet.com.
EDWINARI at worldnet.com?
Yes.
Good. And you're from Australia?
Actually, I'm a New Zealander.
Oh, I'm sorry. I bet it's really irritating being told you're an Australian. Like Canadians being asked what part of the States they're from.
I'm used to it. It happens to us all the time.
And now, you said on the phone that you could bring me some references. One from someone who's known you in a professional capacity and one personal one.
Oh, yeah. Here's one from John Keane, who was the manager at the Play Centre in Wellington, where I worked for 3 years after I left school. It's got all his contact details on.
Thank you. So, this was your last employer?
Yes, apart from a bit of waitressing recently, but that was just temporary. I'm sure John will answer any questions if you contact him.
We do run checks, yes. And a personal reference?
Oh, you can contact the friend of my mother's I'm staying with here in London, Eileen Dorsini. She's a professor. She's known me all my life because she used to be our neighbour back home when she was a primary school teacher there. Now she's working here at the Institute of Education.
Oh, good.
I've got her contact details here for you.
Thanks. I think I have some jobs to suit you. Oh, do you have any practical qualifications, by the way? Life-saving, music, anything?
I've got an up-to-date first aid certificate. I did a course when I was working.
That's good. First aid. Anything else?
Well, I've got a driving licence, as I told you on the phone, but that's not special, you said. Almost everyone needs that, really. I've got a sailing qualification. It's a certificate of competence.
So you're a yachtswoman?
I love sailing.
Well, I'll note you have a certificate. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there are 3 families, and the job description is much the same for all of them, as I explained. There are a few other things you need to know. Anyway, the first family is here in London.
Yes, I did make a few notes. London, that's the Bentons with 2 children?
Yes, that's right. A girl of 3 and her brother, who's 8. The little boy has a quite serious food allergy. Did you learn about things like that on your course?
Oh, well, I know what to do if someone has an allergic reaction.
Good. But what they mainly want is someone with an interest in sport, as, well, that's the kind of family they are.
Oh, that's okay. I'll enjoy that.
Good. Now, the next people are in the country near Oxford.
Oh, yeah, the Grangers?
Yeah, so they have twin boys of 5 who are a bit of a handful, I suspect. But it's a lovely place, quite a grand house, and the family is extremely welcoming. They keep horses. Do you ride?
I did when I was younger. I like animals generally.
Well, animal lover was their special request, so you'd be fine there. The last family...
Yes?
I don't think I told you. They live in Scotland.
Really? What's their name?
Campbell.
Oh, yes. And they have 4 girls under 10?
That's it. They have a lovely city flat, and they own a small island.
Wow!
Actually, you might get on with them very well. They particularly wanted someone who would be prepared to cook when they go camping on the island.
Camping would really suit me, and I'm used to taking my turn doing the food, but it is a long way from London.
Yeah, well, you can think about it. Then, as soon as I've checked your references, we can arrange for you to talk to all of the families.
Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll email you as soon as I can.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you to Cityscope, our lovely modern sports and leisure facility. I've brought you up to the rooftop cafe on top of the stadium so that you can enjoy the view while I explain briefly what we have here and point out to you the major features of the site. Then we'll go round and have a look at ground level.
Oh, that'd be interesting. I'm glad.
We're extremely proud of this new facility. You see, when the project was first discussed, we expected that a multinational company would give us half our funding, and the central government grant would make up most of the rest, with a smaller contribution from local business. Well, we'd got quite far into the planning stage when the multinational pulled out, and both central and local government decided they couldn't afford anything. So, we ended up with a beautiful project, a small amount of sponsorship promised by local organisations, and nothing else. We thought we'd never build it, but at the last moment, we had an amazing donation of several million pounds from a national transport company, and that got us going again, and we managed to get all the rest from local fundraising. There's hardly a street in the city that hasn't made its contribution one way or another. So there's a true sense of local ownership here. So this is what we got. We wanted a new stadium because the 1950s football stadium is on the other side of town and is shortly due to be pulled down and built over. This site was the old airport, with some playing fields on one side of it, and a few buildings from the 1930s when the airfield first opened. So, we were able to plan a new stadium with plenty of room for all the things people wanted. The playing fields have been upgraded and refenced, so they are now a set of top-quality outdoor pitches for amateur football, hockey and so on. We have both sports and other entertainments here. We want to encourage all kinds of people onto the site and hope some of them may come to use the cinema or the cafe and end up trying the fitness centre. These are all grouped together. The cafe is in the original 1930s passenger hall, and the architects have managed to retain some of the elegant style of the building. The other buildings, like the control tower, which would have made a great feature, and the aircraft hangars, which we had hoped might house the fitness centre, were unfortunately not structurally sound enough to preserve. So, everything else is newly built, opened in 2010. Right, now if you'd like to gather a little closer to the window, I'll point out the various buildings. We're at the highest point of the stadium here in the rooftop cafe, on the opposite side to the main entrance doors. On our left, you can see two buildings just beyond the end of the stadium. The closest one is the business centre, used for meetings and conferences and so on, which provides a good source of revenue for the upkeep of the sports facilities. And next to the business centre, the bigger building is the hotel, which is rented from us by an independent company. As you see, they are served by the perimeter road, which runs round 3/4 of the site. Now, coming round to the front of the building, immediately in front of the entrance, that circular open space at the end of the road is the transport hub. From here, there are buses and a monorail link to the free car park, about 10 minutes from here, but you can't see that. There's also a large secure cycle park. Oh, and disabled parking, of course. People find it's very convenient and it keeps the site virtually car-free. OK, now if you look as far as you can over to the right, beyond the buildings, you can see our outdoor pitches, which I mentioned earlier. Between the pitches and the entrance is a little kind of pedestrian plaza. Are you with me? OK, with the cinema in the building furthest away from us, next to the pitches. Then there's the 10-pin bowling between the cinema and the road. Near the far end of the perimeter road and between the mini roundabout and the pitches, there's our fitness centre with all kinds of equipment and a small pool and changing rooms for teams using the pitches. Then, joined onto the stadium, next to the entrance, is a range of small shops which all specialise in sports equipment, clothes, shoes. They sell toys and so on as well, all that sort of thing. They seem to be doing well. As you see, the service road goes right round, but we keep the traffic and the pedestrians well apart. So it's all very relaxed round the plaza, popular with families. And just in front of the bowling is our lovely restaurant. You can see it from here. It's that building on the plaza between us and the bowling. It's open all day and in the evenings. There's quite a queue there at weekends, I'm pleased to say. So, now you've got the layout, we can go and have a closer look at everything.
Oh, nice.
Oh, hi, Ivan.
Oh, hi, Chloe.
I'm glad I bumped into you because I've been looking at this prospectus about courses at the university. I'm thinking of doing a business studies degree. Isn't that what you're doing?
Yes, I'm about to start my 3rd year. I think you'd enjoy it. Is there something on the course that you're not sure about?
Well, you know I've been working for a publisher for the last 4 years as a production assistant.
That will be really valuable experience because a lot of people go to university straight from school and don't have that kind of background.
Yeah, I know. And I'm used to dealing with figures and percentages and things, but it's been a while since I've sat down and put my ideas into an essay. I was never that good at it, and I'm not sure I can do it now.
But you did okay at school, so I'm sure you'll soon get into it again. I was worried about different things when I started, like if I'd be able to use all the computer programs. But you only really need the basics. You have to do a lot of presentations, and I thought that would be hard. But we'd actually had such a lot of practice at school, it was fine.
But did you find writing essays easy?
It was okay, but I was hopeless at getting them in by the deadline. And I was always late for lectures, so I had to work hard at that, and I tend to be early now.
It's good that you've sorted yourself out before you go and get a job, or you might not have it very long. I think the course looks really interesting.
It is. And it also gave me the chance to spend 6 months working in a local business last year.
That's not so important for me, unless I could go abroad to use my foreign languages. But that doesn't seem to be on offer, which is a shame. What really appeals to me, though, is the idea of being assessed throughout the year. I think that's a much more productive way of learning, instead of everything being decided in an exam at the end.
It's good for people like you who are hardworking all year round. You'll be spending all your time in the library. They've just expanded it too.
That's good.
Well, yes and no. They've made the study area bigger, but it means they've taken some of the magazines and periodicals away. So I think it was better as it was. The university is expanding all the time, and there are lots of new courses coming next year.
Well, that's great news, isn't it? It means the college will have a better reputation, as more people will hear about it. So that's good for us.
I agree, but they really need to add more lecture rooms, as we often have lectures in tiny rooms.
Well, you obviously think overall it's a good place to do a degree. I should probably go and have a look round.
Well, it's holidays now, and there's not much going on there.
Oh, so it's probably not worth going in now.
But you could email my tutor. I know he'd be happy to answer any questions. I can give you his email address. I looked at quite a lot of other universities and read loads of prospectuses, but I thought this one was the best.
I was a bit unsure about all the different subjects you can choose on this course.
Well, I can tell you a bit about them. There are some subjects you have to do and some that you can choose. The most interesting course I've done is public relations.
From what I've read, it doesn't look very demanding. Some of it is really just common sense.
But it will be really useful if you want to go into marketing or advertising.
That's true. But I need to find out a bit more about it first before I decide if it will really help me. It's difficult to tell from the prospectus.
But you are interested in marketing?
Oh, yes.
Well, you can choose a marketing course. I wasn't very impressed with that course, actually. The tutor didn't make it very interesting.
It's good to put on your CV that you've done a marketing course, though. So that would be a definite for me, and maybe I'd get a different tutor. What other courses did you choose?
I'm doing taxation as I was thinking of training to be an accountant, but I'm not sure now.
Oh, that will be a good option for me, because I enjoy working with figures. Although I don't want to be an accountant, it'll be good to have an understanding of taxation, especially if I ever run my own business.
Then there's the most popular course, which is human resources, and a lot of people seem to get jobs in that field.
My friend works in human resources, and she's really good at it. But I don't think I've got the right personality, so I'd give that one a miss. I'm more interested in how businesses actually work, the structure.
That's a compulsory course, the structure of business.
Oh.
But you might find information systems helpful.
Is that kind of computer programs?
Some of it is, but also databases, project management, and other things.
Oh, this sounds useful. But I'll have to look at some of the other possibilities first. You know, Ivan, this course sounds as though it would suit me. I'm going to apply.
Great. If there's anything else you want to ask me, you've got my number.
Thanks.
I work for the National Weather Service, and as part of your course on weather patterns, I've been asked to talk to you about how we predict the weather. We're so used to switching on our TVs and getting an up-to-date weather forecast at any time of day or night that we probably forget that this level of sophistication has only been achieved in the last few decades, and weather forecasting is actually an ancient art. So I want to start by looking back into history. The earliest weather forecasts appeared in the 1500s in almanacs, which were lists of information produced every year. Their predictions relied heavily on making links between the weather and where the planets were in the sky on certain days. In addition, predictions were often based on information, like if the fourth night after a new moon was clear, good weather was expected to follow. But once basic weather instruments were invented, things slowly started to change. In the mid-15th century, a man called Nicholas Kuser, a German mathematician, designed a hygrometer which told people how much humidity there was in the air. To do this, Kuser put some sheep's wool on a set of scales and then monitored the change in the wool's weight according to the air conditions. A piece of equipment we all know and use is the thermometer. Changes in temperature couldn't really be measured until the Italian Galileo Galilei invented his thermometer in 1593. It wasn't like a modern-day thermometer because it had water inside it instead of mercury. In fact, it wasn't until 1714 that Gabriel Fahrenheit invented the first mercury thermometer. In 1643, another Italian, called Evangelista Torricelli, invented the first barometer, which measured atmospheric pressure. This was another big step forward in more accurate weather predicting. As time went on, during the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries, All these meteorological instruments were improved and developed, and people in different countries began to record measurements relating to their local weather. However, in those days it was very difficult to send records from one part of the world to another, so it wasn't possible for them to share their information until the electric telegraph became more widespread. This meant that weather observations could be sent on a regular basis to and from different countries. By the 1860s, therefore, weather forecasts were becoming more common and accurate because they were based on observations taken at the same time over a wide area. In 1863, France started publishing weather maps each day. This hadn't been done before, and other nations soon followed. So that was the start of national weather forecasting. And I'll now tell you how we at the National Weather Centre get the information we need to produce a forecast. Even today, one of the most important methods we use is observations, which tell us what the weather is doing right now. Observation reports are sent automatically from equipment at a number of weather stations in different parts of the country. They are nearly all based at airports, although a few are in urban centres. The equipment senses temperature, humidity, pressure, and wind speed direction. Meteorologists also rely really heavily on satellites, which send images to our computer screens. What we see on our screens is bright colours. Orange represents dry air, and bright blue shows moisture levels in the atmosphere. The satellites are located 22,000 miles above the surface of the Earth, and it's amazing that despite that distance, it's possible for us to make out an individual cloud and follow it as it moves across the landscape. In addition to collecting data from the ground, we need to know what's happening in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So a couple of times a day, from many sites across the country, we send radio sondes into the air. A radio sonde is a box containing a package of equipment, and it hangs from a balloon which is filled with gas. Data is transmitted back to the weather station. Finally, radar. This was first used over 150 years ago and still is. New advances are being made all the time, and it is one method for detecting and monitoring the progress of hurricanes. Crucial information is shown by different colours representing speed and direction. Radar is also used by aircraft, of course. All this information from different sources is put into computer models, which are like massive computer programs. Sometimes they all give us the same story, and sometimes we have to use our own experience to decide which is showing the most accurate forecast, which we then pass on to you. So, I hope next time you watch the weather forecast, you'll think about how we meteorologists spend our time. And maybe I've persuaded some of you to study meteorology in more depth.
Hello, Robert Gladwell speaking.
Oh, hi. My name's Chloe Martin. I was given your name and phone number by Ben Winters. I work with him, and he said you're a member of Midbury Drama Club.
Yes, I am.
Well, I've just moved to the area, and I'm keen to join a drama club.
Great. Yes, I can give you some information. We're one of the oldest drama clubs in the area, as the club started in 1957. We now have about 60 members. Our youngest member is 10, and our oldest member is 78.
Oh, I think I saw a picture in the newspaper the other day of some of your members being presented with a prize.
Yes, the youth section did very well in a competition and won £100, which will help with their next production. Anyway, tell me a bit more about yourself.
Well, I've done a bit of acting. I was in a couple of musicals when I was at university, and a historical play more recently.
We mainly do comedy plays. We get good audiences for that kind of thing. We haven't attempted a musical yet, but we might do one soon.
Oh, when do you usually meet?
On Tuesdays.
Well, presumably I'll need to do an audition.
Yes, there were a few auditions last Tuesday, and we'll be doing more at our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks' time. That's on Tuesday the 12th of March. There'll be another opportunity 2 weeks after that, which will be on the 26th of March.
Oh, well, I can come to your next meeting, and if I don't get an acting part in a play, I'd be happy to help with something else. I've designed publicity before.
Great! We're very short of people who can do that, so that would be really good. There are a lot of people who like making scenery, so we get plenty of help with that, but we haven't got enough people to do the lights at the moment. So, if you think you can do that, or you have any friends who would like to, do bring them along. We can show you what to do if you haven't got any experience.
I'll have to think about it. So, do you meet in the theatre?
We do our performances in the Manor Theatre, but we only hire that for the nights of the actual performances. We meet to rehearse every Tuesday evening in the community hall. We rent a room there.
Oh, I'm not sure where that is. I'll be coming by car because I don't live in the town centre.
It's in Ashburton Road. As you're coming towards the centre, down Regent Street, you need to turn left at the crossroads.
Oh, I know. There's a big car park down there, just before you get to a hotel. It's on the other side of the road from the sports centre.
That's it. That's the closest place to leave your car, and you don't have to pay in the evening to park there. We meet at 7:30, and we usually finish by 9:30 or 10.
OK.
I haven't mentioned that we have to make a charge. Everyone pays a subscription of £180 to be a member for a year. You can pay for the whole year at once, or you can pay £15 every month. It works out the same. There are reductions for retired people and under 18s, but I don't think you come into either category.
No, I'm 26.
Oh, that fee covers all the costs, like photocopying of scripts and producing the posters, but it excludes the costumes for the performances. We ask people to pay for the hire of those themselves. It does mean they look after them properly, as they know they won't get their deposit back otherwise.
Can I come along to the next meeting then?
Of course. We'd love to see you. And if you want to know more about how we run the auditions or the next play we're doing, why don't you give our secretary a ring? She'll be really pleased to help you.
Oh, what's her name?
It's Sarah Sordicott. That's SAWDICOTT.
Got that. And her phone number?
I've only got a mobile number for her. Just a minute. Let me find it. Yeah, it's 07955 240063.
Great. Thanks for your help.
And now here's Jasmine, who's come to tell us about this week's charity.
Hi, Fergus. This week, I'm going to talk about forward thinking and their plans for the Colville Centre. So, in recent years, people have realised how useful the arts can be within healthcare. The idea behind forward thinking is to use the arts to promote well-being. The charity develops projects for people with special needs and health problems, and also delivers training to healthcare professionals in using the arts, as well as supplying them with information and advice. Forward thinking doesn't just run art and craft classes to distract people who are ill. or recovering from illness, but arranges longer-term projects and courses, as it's been shown that the arts can bring all sorts of positive changes in patients, including benefits such as shortening the length of stay in hospital and reducing the amounts of medicine they need.
I see.
Forward Thinking has experience of working with a broad range of people, from young adults with learning difficulties to older people in homes or daycare centres and people with physical disabilities. The organisation's been around since 1986, and it gradually expanded during the 1990s. Then, in the new millennium, it was decided to find a memorable name. So it's been operating as Forward Thinking for several years, in fact since 2005. It's quite a locally based charity, mainly for people in the southern part of this region, which includes all rural and urban communities outside the city of Clifton, which has its own organisation. There are, of course, some similar charities in other parts of the country, in London and so on.
And what's the present fundraising in aid of?
Yeah, well, the charity needs funding in order to buy the Colville Centre. This is a former village school, which was built in 1868. It was modernised and refurbished by the present owners last year, so it's ideal for art classes and for small social events, performances, seminars and so on. Forward Thinking is fundraising to purchase the building so they can use it to continue running classes and so on for the general public, and eventually also for some of the people they help.
Right. So, can you give us a few ideas about what classes people might do there? Is it all art classes?
Well, there are some very good art classes, but there are lots of other things going on as well. So, for example, there's Learn Salsa with Nina Bellina's team. They say that salsa is an easy dance to learn. It's also an excellent form of exercise, according to Nina. And that class is for both men and women, of course. It's ideal for beginners and what they call refreshers. That's £100 for 10 sessions. Then, another class is called Smooth Movers. It's with Kevin Bennett. And it's for you if you don't have the same energy levels as you used to when you were a teenager. It's a gentle exercise class, geared to the needs of whoever is in the group in a particular session. And Kevin is qualified to teach classes to people getting over injuries and so on, and balance training. That's £60 for 10 sessions. Then there's a day called Art of the Forest with Jamie Graham, where you discover Upper Wood, a short walk from the Colville Centre, and learn how to design in 3D with natural materials. It's an unusual and exciting way to be creative. Jamie is an artist, with a background also as a country park ranger. For this day, youngsters must be accompanied by a parent or guardian, and the costs are adults, £40, under 14s, £10. But it's best value at £80 for a family of 4. The next one is The Money Maze, and this is a series of talks by Peter O'Reilly, an independent financial advisor. He gives advice on family finances, things like everything parents need to know about managing the costs of bringing up children, sending them to university, and actually also about care for elderly relatives. It's £10 per talk, which will all go to support Forward Thinking. And as a final example of what's on offer, there's Make a Play. That's for 8 to 14s. And this activity is such a hit that it usually sells out within days of being announced. Basically, what you do is write, rehearse, and perform a play in just 2 days. And it doesn't require any previous experience. I gather there's lots of fun and silliness along the way. And the best bit, perhaps, is that there's a performance for family and friends at the end. It's just £50 for 2 days.
Pretty good range of activities, I think. And all raising money for a good cause.
Yes. And the all-important contact details are colville@forwardthinking.org.uk or write
Now, Stefan and Lauren, you worked together on the assignment for your urban geography course, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
I know you made a plan of what you were going to do before you went on the field trip. Did you stick to it?
More or less.
Okay, so where did you start?
Well, first of all, we selected one area of the city to work in. We decided on the centre.
Mm-hmm.
And we looked in detail at how it has been developed by doing a survey.
Yeah, we did that by walking round and dividing the area into different categories, such as residential, commercial and industrial, so we could record land use. We're going to find some maps from 50 years ago and from 100 years ago, so we can look at what has changed.
Good. So that gives you a foundation. Then what did you do?
I was interested in looking at how polluted the city was.
I thought that was too general a topic and would be difficult to check. But Stefan persuaded me, and actually it was quite interesting because before we started, we assumed that a lot of the pollution problems would be caused by industry.
In fact, most of the industrial development has been on the outskirts.
Oh.
And most pollution is caused by the traffic which passes through the city centre every day.
Right.
There are 5 major road junctions around the edge of the city, so we set up equipment to check the air quality on each of those 3 times on one day.
In the morning and evening, which is when most journeys are made in and out of the city, and at 2:30 in the afternoon.
On the same day, we went to the 2 busiest junctions in the morning and evening to calculate the traffic flow into the city.
Right.
We'll be able to produce some graphs from the figures we collected.
Yeah.
Presumably you then looked at where all these cars ended up.
I thought we should look at why people were coming into the city, whether it was for employment or education or leisure activities. But Stefan thought that would be too difficult.
Because most people were in cars, it would be hard to ask them.
Yeah.
So we decided to spend an afternoon examining the parking facilities available instead. We established the capacity of each car park, and we spent an afternoon counting cars in and out, so we have an idea of how long people spend in the city centre.
So, do you have evidence that most journeys are made by car within the city centre?
We checked local government statistics to see if that was true, but they were inconclusive.
Everything is quite close together in the city centre, and there are wide pavements, so you would expect people to walk from one place to another.
So we chose a number of locations and we noted how many pedestrians passed a particular spot.
How did you choose where to do that?
We stood at 2 places in the business district. One in the shopping area and the other was in an area where there are more tourists.
Right.
I thought it was really important to talk to people, so we carried out a survey on how people usually travelled into the city. We asked them about their usual means of transport.
We found out that it varied according to why people were travelling. If they were employed in the city, they wanted to get there quickly, but if they were coming in for their leisure time, they didn't mind using the bus.
That's all we had time for while we were there.
Okay. So, shall we talk about what you're going to do next and how you're going to divide the tasks up? How are you going to present the data you've got?
Well, some of the information can be presented as graphs or maps.
I'm quite good at the software.
You'd better do that then, Lauren. I'll help you check all the statistics before you start.
Okay.
It's good to present as much as you can visually. Is there anything else you can use as visuals?
We've got a lot of photographs which we can go through.
We both took them, so some will be duplicated. It's going to take ages to go through them all. Maybe one of us should just choose some.
It's better if you collaborate. That way you'll end up with the best of what you've got.
That's fine. We'll do that.
And when the graphs and maps are done, you'll need to write a report, an analysis of the data. Will you do that together?
I think that should be my responsibility if we're going to share the work out evenly. I can use some of Lauren's notes as well as my own.
OK. And finally, you'll be presenting your project to the rest of the group in a couple of weeks' time.
We thought it'd be better for Stefan to do that, as he's got more experience at that kind of thing.
I would prefer to have input from both of you, as I have to do an assessment.
Oh.
We'll take turns then. We'll divide it into sections and talk about a few things each.
Good. You'll find it easier, Lauren, than doing a presentation on your own. Well, if you need to ask me any more questions while you're working on this, email me. I look forward to seeing what you produce.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming to this series of talks. Before I talk in detail about the experiments and innovations of the British ceramicists, I'd like to give you a summary of the social and manufacturing background in which they lived and worked. So, we're talking about England, or more specifically, the region known as the Midlands. And we need to go back mainly to the 18th century and briefly even earlier to put it in a global context. Now, at that period, the majority of the population, whatever their station in life, as you might say, were dependent for their living, in one way or another, not on the geographical location of where they lived, but on the physical characteristics of the actual land they lived on. This is true whether we're talking about the aristocracy, the owners of great estates who incidentally had no snobbery about the concept of making money from all the reserves of coal or timber or stone on their rolling acres, or the farmers making a fat living from the rich soils. And besides these groups, and the less affluent ones, the deposits of iron ore and lead, the limestone and flint, and the brown and yellow clays also sustained the numerous industries in the area. It's important to recognise that it was already an industrial region and had been so for centuries. There were many Midland trades, some of them indigenous, some of them not. For example, there were immigrants from France who came as early as the late 16th century, and they were producers of glass. A century later, there is plenty of evidence that the variety of trades was enormous. There was brewing in Burton-on-Trent, silk weaving and ribbon making near Coventry, framework knitting around Nottingham, and of course in Cheshire men dug the salt, as we still do nowadays even, which in that era was sent downriver to the estuary of the Mersey. Now, among these well-established trades, one of the oldest of the local crafts was pottery. As you will probably be aware, ceramics has always been a mix of science, design and skill. And a good potter is, in a sense, an experimental chemist, trying out new mixes and glazes and needing to be alert to the impact of changes of temperature on different types of clay. For 200 years, up to the time we are concerned with, potters had been making butter pots and pitchers and patterned plates, using the clay which was plentiful in the area where they lived, in a handful of North Staffordshire villages dotted along the low hills. Now I want to explain a little about the industrial processes which had preceded the great breakthrough in Germany in 1708. That's when the formula for porcelain was discovered, a secret that had been held in China for 1,000 years. In the Midlands, in England as elsewhere, there had basically been two kinds of pottery. The first is still known as earthenware. Now, this was a bit rough and ready, but it was deservedly popular for several reasons. To start with, it was relatively cheap, so it could be used by most households. This was because it could be made from local clay without any complicated processing or added materials. From the potter's point of view, there was another reason for its cheapness. This was that it could be fired in simple ovens or kilns and at relatively low temperatures, so he didn't have to spend so much money on fuel to achieve the necessary heat. On the other hand, after one firing in the kiln, the problem with earthenware was that it remained porous, so had limited usefulness. So for most purposes, it had to go back in the kiln for a second firing before it became waterproof. And another thing was that it was extremely breakable. I mean, before it had even been sold. I suppose the potter wouldn't have minded so much if people just had to keep coming back for more every time they broke a jug or whatever. But it was very inconvenient because it meant there was a lot of wastage in the course of the manufacturing process. Anyway, for all these reasons, if people could afford it, and that would be all but the very poor, they would buy stoneware, a much tougher product. Now, for this, the potter used a slightly more expensive raw material, which was made by combining clay and flint, and this mixture was fired at a far higher heat, with the result that the ingredients vitrified. That is to say, in effect, the whole thing became glassy. And because of this, it was non-porous, and naturally this was regarded as a great advance. Well, that's the situation in the 18th century. Are there any questions at this stage? Okay, so now we can go on to look at the age of innovation.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hi, I'm Carlton Mackay, and you booked me some flights recently to Australia and some internal ones?
Oh, yes, Mr. Mackay. I remember you now, of course.
Well, I find I'm going to need car hire while I'm in Sydney after all. I think you said you could recommend a good value company?
Yes, that's right. Cost-wise cars. They're very good and don't charge lots of extras. They have 3 offices in the Sydney area, including one office right at the airport.
So I'll just book it online?
Yes, you can book online, but you should have their phone number too, just in case.
Of course.
That's 1800 705 639. It's on the website, and you can get a discount if you quote your booking reference from us.
Oh, what's that?
I mean the one you got from me when we booked your flights. I have it here. 743002.
Oh, thanks. I guess I've got it at home, but I'll write it down again in case. A discount is good. So, where exactly is the office? I'll be coming to the domestic terminal from Melbourne.
It's immediately outside the international terminal.
OK. And another thing I want to check is, will they be open when I arrive, or is it just office hours?
Well, they open at 7:15 and close at 6:15 in the evening. So let's see. You're due to land at 6:10. By the time you've collected your bags and so on, which will take a little while, they won't be open. But if you arrange it in advance, they can wait for you. You do have to pay an extra $30 for that, though.
OK. Well, I'm staying near the airport the first night, so I could go back in the morning and save a day's hire?
Yes, that'd be better. That'd save you about $50.
Do you know what kind of cars they have?
Quite a variety, I think. The best value should be under $60 a day with luck. That would be the Echo, I guess.
Sorry?
ECHO. Like when your voice bounces back?
I suppose I have to book online before I leave?
That's the best way. They won't deduct any charges until you finish with the car, but they do need your credit card number when you book, and of course they'll want to see your driving licence when you collect. How long will you need it?
I'm in Sydney for 7 days. I'll only actually need to use it on 3 or 4 of those days, I hope, but I'll keep it for the whole week. I guess it's going to be a few $100s. Can you suggest anything I can do to keep the cost down?
Oh, you get quite a big discount if you do less than 1,000 kilometres in the week.
Oh, that's good. I don't suppose I will be driving that far, actually.
But, oh yes, the other thing I should mention is the insurance. It's included in the price.
Oh, that is good value then.
Yes, but what you must remember is that it doesn't cover anything except the car, so you must be careful not to leave anything at all in it when you park, because your luggage isn't insured, even if it's out of sight, locked in the boot.
Yeah, well, I think my travel policy will cover that, actually.
Good.
OK, and can I return the car outside office hours? My flight home is very early in the morning. Can I put the keys through the door or something?
There's a secure box just outside the office on the pavement. You just drop the keys in there.
Oh, good.
And one other thing, you should remember to buy petrol before you leave it. If you don't drop the car back with a full tank, you get charged to fill it. I recommend you go to a supermarket before you go out to the airport.
Thanks for the tip.
Not at all. Do call in again if there's anything else I can help with.
I will. Many thanks.
Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here in London and to see so many people interested in working in hotels. We in the international finest group of hotels are very proud of our business, and we are always on the lookout for quality recruits in every department. Now, I'm going to outline some of the areas of work where we are currently recruiting and the essential skills or qualifications for them. Then I'll run through our recruitment procedure. OK? At the moment, we're looking for a number of people for administrative posts in different parts of the world, and also some roles which involve a lot of travelling. One of our main business streams is hosting special events for other businesses. If you have good communication and organisational skills, with a good level of fluency in at least one European and one non-European language, I'd suggest you think about becoming part of the team which sets up these events for all our centres. This would mean being based full-time in our London office. The work ranges from setting up small meetings a few days ahead to organising international conferences 2 years in advance, so there's plenty of variety. Some of the conferences we run have as many as 1,000 delegates, so it's quite challenging. Then there are some posts available for professionals in the catering field. Chefs we can find. It seems this is a popular career choice in many parts of the world, as in the UK these days, in spite of the exacting standards. But people to manage catering departments need more than a love of producing quality food. We're after really energetic and totally efficient young managers who already have the relevant business qualifications, no training on the job here, and they must share the team's determination to make everything run smoothly at any time of the day or night. Or if you are the type of person who enjoys a challenge, what about becoming one of our relief housekeepers? You'll be a good people person, well organised and supremely flexible. As well as covering UK holidays, maternity and paternity leave, there will be times when you have to fill a key post when someone's sick, which could be anywhere in our European, Middle Eastern or Far Eastern hotels, so you must be prepared to hop on a plane at 5 minutes' notice. The International Finest brand name attracts visitors from all over the world and on all kinds of business and leisure trips. Our swimming pools and gyms need to be run by people with the highest standards of customer service. You don't have to be a great athlete, but smart appearance and a pleasant manner are necessary. A diploma in sports science would be the minimum requirement here. Lastly, I'd just like to mention that the main London office has another vacancy. Most bookings come online, especially from the Far East, for people coming to Europe. If you have fluency and some keyboard skills in, for example, Spanish or any Far Eastern languages, either having taken a degree or preferably from having lived and worked overseas, you might be just the person we're looking for to deal with email bookings and queries in the office here. A flexible attitude to working hours is also important, as you may have to come in outside normal office hours. So that's an overview of the kind of jobs. Now, how to get them. First of all, provided you have a UK work permit, you can go online and register an interest in working for us. By return, you'll receive a unique applicant's code, which is your personal identification number and which we'll use in all communications. Along with that, you get access to the Human Resources website, where you should make sure you understand the legal terms and conditions which apply to all our employees. That's also where you can then download the application form, fill it in, and send it back along with your CV. You'll know within 48 hours whether you're being considered as you get an automated response. Sorry if it's a bit impersonal, but at least it's quick. Hopefully, if we like the sound of you, there will be in that automated response a list of times for an initial interview which will take place by telephone during the following week. You confirm by email which of the time slots will suit you. Provided the interview is satisfactory, at that point we'll ask for any evidence of qualifications required, which might be your degree or diploma certificate or so on, which you have to send certified copies of, and we contact your referees. The last thing you have to do is you come along and have a look round the International Finest Group head office, get to know some of our team in Human Resources face to face, and participate in a one-day recruitment seminar, which involves a number of group and individual activities, along with other potential employees. Then, with luck, we'll offer you a job. So I hope you like the sound of joining our organisation.
So, let's hear what you're doing for your next project.
I've decided to design a roof garden for a supermarket. I've been looking at some on the web, and I think that a garden on top of a building is the up-and-coming thing.
Okay. So you've done a bit of reading already?
Mm-hmm.
What benefits would there be for the client? Why do you think a supermarket chain would be willing to meet the expense of construction? You do realise that would be the first thing they raise.
Yes, I know. But I'd explain that in spite of the initially high expense, they would save that much in approximately 5 years. Well, I'd have to do sums. Calculate specifically.
Yes, how would the saving come about?
Mainly through lower heating and aircon bills. The extra insulation offered by having a layer of living plants in the soil would make a huge difference.
Okay, but they might feel the expense of maintenance would be an issue. After all, supermarkets don't normally employ gardeners.
What I thought was, if they made it a community garden, rather than a simple low-maintenance green roof...
So there'd be public access?
Oh, yes. Then there'd be a sense of ownership in the local community. And people could take responsibility for it, instead of the supermarket paying a commercial company, and really boost their public relations.
That's a good point. And have you been looking into how roof gardens are built nowadays?
I'm still exploring that. But if I take advantage of the latest technologies for roof gardens, it shouldn't be too difficult. But in any case, you have to use lightweight materials.
But that's a matter of making the right choices. You can even use quite traditional ones, such as wood, for the planting areas.
Yes, that's what I thought. It'll look good and it isn't too heavy.
But for the basic construction, the issue you have to address first is the material used between the building and the garden.
You mean the barrier fabric, which ensures there's no chance of rainwater leaking down into the building?
Yes. Nowadays that is very good and quite easily sourced.
Then, on the other hand, there's the business of water within the roof garden itself.
You mean drainage? That's an important feature of the construction in any roof design.
Yes, but I think most drainage issues have been well understood for quite a long time.
Okay. But another thing is with plants in an exposed situation, you usually need to find ways to optimize rainfall.
Yes, because rainwater is best for the garden, if you can store it for when it's needed. What I've been looking at are some buildings which use fairly conventional storage tanks, the kind that have been in use for decades, but have them linked to modern automatic watering systems.
Sounds complicated.
It's less so in practice than it sounds, I think. I've been researching them, and actually the latest ones definitely work very well, and they can be electronically regulated to suit the local microclimate.
That sounds interesting. You seem to have been doing some thorough research. Make sure you reference all your sources when you write it up.
Yes, sure. There's one more aspect I'd just like to run past you if there's time. I want to include a light feature in the design.
Of course.
I've got a sketch here.
Let's have a look then.
Well, I was really impressed by something I saw on a roof in Cornwall, and I'd like to design something similar. You have an area of planting, and I'm thinking of installing this lighting in an area filled with low-growing evergreen shrubs.
You'd have to have lights and things well away from anywhere children might be. But I can see this could be very effective, if a bit complicated. How would it work? On this drawing, this is a section view. You have this low wall on the right.
Yes, that's it. This is just one element, and these areas would be repeated all round the planted area. I think this will probably be a wooden wall using reclaimed timbers with an angled ceramic top surface.
Perhaps even ridge tiles, like they use on roofs?
Ah, yes. That'd be just the sort of thing. And that'd make it weatherproof. And then the heavy-duty electric wiring comes up through the floor just outside the planted area and into the wall. Then it's brought through to a projector low in the side of the wall, and that sends a beam of light along the fibre optic cable.
So there's no electricity in the actual lights. The fibre optic goes across the surface of the soil in the planting area.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. The shrubs will soon grow to cover it up, of course, and then the cable goes past a wooden post, which is between the shrubs and can be a support for them as they grow bigger, and then runs up into each element of the installation.
So the light beam is carried up to the top of each element and illuminates a kind of conical glass cap? I see. Is that the bit which would glow in the dark?
Yes.
And what's the cap supported on? Is it a wall?
No, it's a slender acrylic rod, like the stem of a flower or mushroom, which the cable runs up inside of.
Well, I'll be interested to see the final drawings.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to putting it all together.
First, I would like to tell you how the Argus computerized photography system has helped marine researchers. Then I shall talk a bit about sand collecting. Well, Argus is the system Dr. Rob Holman developed when he was working at a research pier on the coast of North Carolina about 20 years ago. This pier stretches out over the water, and it's the longest research pier in the world, with an observation tower on the end of it. The researchers there make precise measurements of how the sand moves about under the waves. This research is critical to the study of beach erosion in places where the coastline is being worn away. The Argus system helps to solve the difficulties encountered by these researchers. The system correlates the data from under the water with what Dr. Holman gets from his fixed camera, which is mounted above the water on the pier and uses time-lapse photography. Some of Dr. Holman's results have changed the way people understand how sand moves. To quote S. Jeffries Williams, a coastal geologist with the United States Geological Survey, the system is a critical piece of new technology. And the Argus system allows us to quantify and document visually the changes to the coast on a variety of different time frames. A lot of these take place when there is a storm, or at other times when it is difficult to have people out on the beach making observations and taking measurements. Up to now, Argus installations have been installed in places in Oregon, California, Hawaii, England, the Netherlands, Australia, New Zealand, Spain, Italy, and Brazil, as well as in North Carolina. Now, I'd like to introduce Dr. Holman's sand collection. He started collecting sand in the 1980s, and he still collects it now, even though he has around 1,000 samples. They come from his travels and from geologists and amateurs all over the world, and the collection includes sand from each continent, including Antarctica. People send his sand in envelopes, plastic bags, paper towels, and all sorts. Each is stored in a glass jar, which Dr. Holman labels by latitude and longitude of its origin, as well as he can work them out. Sometimes the information is a bit sketchy. Anyway, it's mainly geology students at the university who study his collection, and they can learn a lot from it. For instance, one set of tubes displays sand from the east coast of the US, so you can see that the sand gets lighter and finer from north to south. By the time a grain of sand eventually washes up on a beach in Florida, at the southern end of that journey, it has been battered by waves for a long time, so the grains are fine and rounded, because most of the time sand is not stationary on the beach. Okay, so if you'd like to collect sand and maybe even send some to Dr. Holman, how should you go about it? Well, the list of equipment is very short and easy to find, but you should keep a supply when you're travelling, as you never know when you'll come across an interesting sand sample. One really handy thing for digging sand, especially if it's hard or frozen, is a spoon. It's perfect for that. If you're travelling by air, it'll have to be plastic, but metal is preferable, as plastic tends to break. You need something to put the samples in that is damp-proof and easy to carry. You can just use plastic bags, but you need to record the location and date on the bag, so you must also have a permanent marker with you, because you can never assume you will remember where you gathered a sample from later on, and don't want it to rub off before you get home. And that's about all you need in the field to collect sand. When you get home, your samples should be logged in a notebook or computer. You need to note the location and be really specific as to exactly whereabouts on the beach you gathered your sample, low tide mark, under cliff area, etc. Then you store your sample. You want to keep everything in good condition and avoid contamination. So first you make absolutely sure that each sample is perfectly dry. You don't need any complicated apparatus for this. You can just air it out on layers of newspaper, which is suitably absorbent. Most people find that's the best way. Then, lastly, but this is really important, before there can be any chance of confusing this latest sample with another, you put it in a clean small bag or a jar, and you must stick an identification label on straight away. Some people put one inside as well, in case the outer label falls off, but that's up to you. Well, that's about all you need to know to get started as a sign collector. Any questions?